People are afraid to merge on freeways in Los Angeles. This is the first thing I hear when I come back to the city. Blair picks me up from LAX and mutters this under her breath as her car drives up the on-ramp. She says, people are afraid to merge on freeways in Los Angeles. Though that sentence shouldn't bother me, it stays in my mind for an uncomfortably long time. Nothing else seems to matter. Not the fact that I'm 18, and it's December, and the ride on the plane had been rough, and the couple from Santa Barbara, who were sitting across from me in first class, had gotten pretty drunk. Not the mud that had splattered the legs of my jeans, which felt kind of cold and loose earlier that day at an airport in New Hampshire. Not the stain on the arm of the wrinkled, damp shirt I wear, a shirt which had looked fresh and clean this morning. Not the tear on the neck of my gray argyle vest, which seems vaguely more Eastern than before, especially next to Blair's clean, tight jeans and her pale blue t-shirt. All of this seems irrelevant next to that one sentence. It seems easier to hear that people are afraid to merge rather than, I'm pretty sure Muriel is anorexic, or the singer on the radio crying out about magnetic waves. Nothing else seems to matter to me but those 10 words. Not the warm winds, which seem to propel the car down the empty asphalt freeway, or the faded smell of marijuana, which still faintly permeates Blair's car. All it comes down to is that I'm a boy, coming home for a month, and meeting someone whom I haven't seen for 4 months, and people are afraid to merge.
I have a guest with me now. This is the novelist Halldor Armand Ásgeirsson here in Iceland, and he's coming on to talk a little bit about Less Than Zero with us. Yeah. So, how's it going?
Good. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, it's 5 a.m. Yeah. So, I actually had to borrow your copy of Less Than Zero because I couldn't find my copy because of my move. When did you first read Less Than Zero?
Well, I remember very vividly when I first heard of Bret Easton Ellis. I think it was. I remember reading a newspaper article about the movie adaptation of American Psycho, and I think it was in the year 2000. So I was 13 at the time, and I'd never heard of it before, and I immediately became very interested in the book. Well, in the movie first, and then we became kind of obsessed with the book later. I'd say maybe 3 years later, when I was about 17, with my cousin and my friends, and we were just obsessed with it. Yeah. And later on, I remember reading Glamorama was the next book that I read, and I didn't read Less Than Zero until a bit later. Actually, it was one of the later books that I read. So it was but. All of his work had a profound effect on me immediately.
Yeah, and how do you like? Because you're like a young guy in Iceland. How does a writer who's writing other than like Manhattan, New York, and Los Angeles, how did you relate to this sort of work?
That is a very interesting question. And being like in this isolated island in the middle of nowhere, that I responded to it a lot, and I've often thought about that. Like, why did American fiction speak to me in that way? And I think Iceland has just been under such huge American influence for a very long time. I'd argue more than most other places. Iceland was occupied by the U.S. During the Second World War. Yeah. Which was referred to as the Blessed War in Iceland, because it turned out to be very good for Iceland. And the U.S. kept an army base here until 2006, and they just the presence of the army just completely, the whole society was just completely immersed in the cultural effects from the U.S. So. Right. I believe, at least that's how I see it, that when I'm growing up and I'm kind of, I guess, the first generation that is almost entirely raised with the internet, and in this place, which is kind of geographically between the US and Europe, but also culturally, I'd say. Yeah. And so when I discover American fiction, and Bret Easton Ellis was the first one. It just completely it changed my life, and in a weird way, I responded so greatly to a world that in many ways was very foreign to me. But when you look at it that way, that I was completely raised on watching MTV and watching American movies and Hollywood and all that. It's not that strange, I think.
Yeah, and you kept an eye on him, because even when I first moved here, and I moved here in 2015, you were listening to the podcast. That was something we talked about when we first met, that you've been kind of following it since, like his podcast as well. So he's somebody that you've been watching ever since you read.
Yeah, for sure. Like I said, I was pretty young when I first discovered his work, and was reading his books in English when I was quite young. And then I remember also very vividly, I was sitting in an airport. And I read that was the first non-fiction piece that I read by him, which was a piece about Charlie Sheen. Mm-hmm. And I remember it so vividly. I was in an airport and I thought, like, my God, this is so fresh and smart and just so. I just loved it so much. And then I immediately started following the podcast, and that's when I kind of also I'd say rediscovered Bret Easton Ellis, because then he has ever since, and especially after Trump got elected, he's kind of been my go-to public intellectual, I'd say, in the U.S., because I immediately completely gave up on the traditional media, and I really felt that he was an independent thinker that I completely trusted and liked.
Yeah, and so like you've written 4 novels, and this Less Than Zero is Bret's first novel, and it has all these different techniques in it that you can see, and it's very much of its time. Like even the scene that I talked about at the beginning when we were getting everything together, when they go into the bathroom and Muriel's shooting up heroin, a photographer for the party comes in. That kind of like, it symbolizes like a distance and not caring. But now today, everyone is a photographer. You have a phone in your pocket everywhere you go.
Yeah, for sure.
And writing a novel at this time, because you can see when you read, and he said it as well on the podcast and in interviews, that he collected basically diaries and journals and things he liked and lists of songs and things like that. And that was what really got him writing, and that's how he wrote his first novel. How did you start writing? What was it? Because you're starting years later.
Yeah.
What was because this is like a epistolary novel where you have these kind of diary entries. Did you start were you like a diary person? Did you write a lot diaries, or was it blogs, or how did you start writing?
Yeah, no, I never wrote. I've never written diaries. I started out for some reason when I was quite young. I started writing plays. Okay. I cannot remember or tell you why I started there, but. I started out with writing these kind of adventure plays, and then later I moved to like satire. I started when I was in high school. I started my own like online. I'd compare it to, I don't know, The Onion or something like that. This kind of satire magazine, and then when I was at the university, I started dabbling with writing my own short stories. Okay. I hadn't done that before, and I just basically tried to. At that time, I was just trying to copy people like Alice and Don DeLillo and these idols, these American idols that I had. Yeah,
that's great. Can we put the comments back up? We're gonna we'll keep you here, and we'll see how people are doing. Yeah. The first. Okay, we got the first novel, Less Than Zero. I would say, because there's something about it, and I want to share it with you, and so maybe get your opinion on it. How I look at it, the entire book is kind of like a subgenre of the spy novel. Mm-hmm. And it's a weird thing, because when you look at the writing, you can see influences by Joan Didion. You can see influences by Fitzgerald, Hemingway. You can tell that he read as a teenager, and then this is the culmination of all of that. You can even tell from the book, because all it really is focused on is his friends, his direct life, and the only real mentions to the outside world are what an 18-year-old would know from history class or Hollywood movies, which is Nazis, the Japanese, everything kind of post World War II. That you would like kind of know about having boomer parents. That's kind of the only the only extra stuff really in the novel is that kind of knowledge of the world. It's very much an 18-year-old, and it reminds me. I kind of think of all of his work, and maybe I'll bring this up in the other live streams. I think of all of Bret Easton Ellis' work as like kind of spy novels, but obviously they're not. There isn't like the classic spy thing, but it reminds me, like if you think of American Psycho and then you think of James Bond, this has been compared before, the listing of items, the way James Bond knows everything he's going to wear and stuff like that. Yeah. But if you even look at Ian Fleming as like kind of a disaffected, rich playboy fantasist who's trying to do something in his life and then ends up being an intelligence officer, this is very similar to Bret Easton Ellis when he talked about he couldn't bring up his sexuality at first, especially because of the time it came out in the 1980s. So you had to keep this kind of stuff to yourself secret, and you're always kind of reporting, and you're always kind of you're kind of hiding in plain sight and spying on popular culture. And then also, especially in Less Than Zero, because it's about kids, it's kind of about youth, and you have their parents that aren't there. Kids are spies. Like everyone knows, as soon like your bad behavior and everything in your life is one thing, but as soon as a kid or it comes into the family, there's a witness or a spy. Yeah. And so I kind of find Less Than Zero and all of his work, and I'll try and piece this kind of theory together as like kind of like spy novels, and especially because the references to Nazis and Japanese, of course it's like of the time as well, but that's very World War II, and it kind of it reminds me of what Ian Fleming was kind of going through as well, because he was a spy during World War II. So I think there's something to this kind of weird thing with Less Than Zero. The Nazi pots, the plants. That's good. But yeah, this is I for me when I was discovering Ellis, and I mean I was at this age where what the things you read have such a profound influence on you and your life, and to me. What struck me instantly was just how incredibly smart I found his books. But at the same time, and that was very new for me at least, that I just found them absolutely hilarious. Like, I mean, of course, everyone I guess shares that. No, but I think that's the one thing that is so incredible, because to be that young, you normally want to show off a bit in your writing and kind of go like, look at how smart I am, and over-exaggerate. Even if you compare it to David Foster Wallace, which Bret Easton Ellis has obviously criticized a bit with Infinite Jest, because it's so exaggerated that it's too much. Yeah. Whereas this is very restrained. And somehow, because of how restrained the prose is and the tone, he's able to have these outrageous characters who never listen to each other. The psychiatrist, like I mentioned before, who at one time he says, "What about me?" and the psychiatrist says, "Let's talk about something else." Yeah. Like this is something where these characters wouldn't work if you were already exaggerated in your prose, but the restrainedness, you believe that they're that shallow, and the characters are kind of interchangeable. And it almost like this first novel isn't really an unreliable narrator novel. It's an unreliable characters novel. None of the characters know anything. And I find it hilarious. Like at one point, they're at a party, and a woman says, "Teddy, I thought you were in a coma." That's the sort of line where if it was already ridiculous, you'd be like, okay, this is getting to absurd. But he's allowed to have this kind of farce playing in the background, this comedic farce, because of how serious the tone is. Yeah. And he never kind of, and he manages to be so restrained. For someone writing this at 18, it's really good. And so you found
it's incredible.
Yeah,
it's absolutely incredible. And then and since I'm here, I just also if you go back to the podcast, when he pinpointed this conflict between aesthetics and ideology, I don't remember. I mean, it was years ago when I heard him first talk about that, and I just, for me, there was such an intelligent observation. I've been thinking about it ever since, because to me, this is this is especially as a writer and an artist, I feel like this is the defining. You could say, you could look at it that way.
Yeah.
It's kind of the defining conflict of our times, whether it's in art or culture in general, or even politics. That this.
Well, yeah, I think as soon as the population was involved in the creation of images and kind of text, and we all became online, it becomes an argument about what's more important, aesthetics or ideology. And this kind of, it permeates kind of through everything.
Yeah, and that's why for me, his books are becoming. I mean, they've been important to me for a very long time, but I feel like they are also growing in importance in this light, because they stand as kind of the triumph of aesthetics to me completely, and of bravery.
Yeah.
Of bravery.
Yeah, it's like an interest to see, like, because especially the things that are depicted in this novel, you have like, you know, he mentions the story, like crimes. They watch a snuff film. There's you know, his friends being whored out because he owes drug money. You have a rape scene. They find a dead body. It's all like very extreme stuff. And if you thought it was like, if it was non-fiction, it might be exploitative. But because he's created this kind of fictional world to deal with this, it becomes a very moral book. And I think he's been described as a moralist, and some people go, how can someone who describes such horrific things be a moralist? And I think it's when you, as like George Orwell would say, the power of facing, the willingness to look at unpleasant things is a moral act in itself.
Yeah.
And you allow people through aesthetics to make, like, tone and style have moral directions. You don't need to give an ideology to explain these things.
Completely.
Yeah.
Completely.
Yeah. Well, I think what we're going to do. What we're going to do now is we're going to go to another reading. Hey, Halldor, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, this is an absolute pleasure and an honor for me. Thank you.
Okay. The next reading, this is Lily Analik. She's the contributing editor for Vanity Fair, the author of Eve's Hollywood, published by Simon & Schuster, and the host of the podcast Once Upon a Time in the Valley. So here's the second reading.
It's a Saturday night. And on some Saturday nights, when there's not a party to go to, and no concerts around town, and everyone's seen all the movies, most people stay at home and invite friends over and talk on the phone. Sometimes someone will drop by and talk and have a drink, and then get back into his car and drive over to somebody else's house. On Saturday nights, there'll be 3 or 4 people who drive from one house to another, who drive from about 10 on Saturday night until just before dawn the next morning. Trent stops by and tells me how a couple of hysterical Japs in Bel Air have seen what they called some kind of monster. Talk of a werewolf. One of their friends has supposedly disappeared. There's a search party in Bel Air tonight, and they found nothing except, and now Trent grins, the body of a mutilated dog. The Japs, who Trent says are really out of their heads, went to spend the night at a friend's house in Encino. Trent says that the Japs probably drank too much tab, had some kind of allergic reaction. Maybe, I say, but the story makes me uneasy. After Trent leaves, I try to call Julian, but there's no answer, and I wonder where he could be. And after I hang the phone up, I'm pretty sure I can hear someone screaming in the house next to us, down the canyon, and I close my window. I can also hear the dog barking out and back, and K-Rock is playing old Doors songs, and War of the Worlds is on Channel 13, and I switch it to some religious program where this preacher is yelling, "Let God use you. God wants to use you. Lie back and let him use you. Use you. Lie back." He keeps chanting, "Use you. Use you." I'm drinking gin and melted ice in bed and imagine that I can hear someone breaking in. But Daniel says over the phone that it's probably my sisters getting something to drink. It's hard to believe Daniel tonight. On the news, I hear there were 4 people beaten to death in the hills last night, and I stay up most of the night, looking out the window, staring into the backyard, looking for werewolves.
Okay, we're back. I hope you enjoyed the werewolves in the desert. That's a kind of a theme throughout there with coyotes. He ends up hitting a coyote. It's a really good reading. So I'm here now with Mette Kousholt. She's a sociologist and stand-up comedian from Denmark. who's based now in Reykjavik, Iceland. She actually read this book the first time when she was the same age as Bret when he published it at 21, and now 10 years later, she's read it again for this podcast. In her research and her stand-up, her main focus is on human interactions and how they create meaning with one another, and also on how identity is performed. And so that's going to impact the way she interprets or looks at the novel. So I'll just turn it over to you. So, Mette, hey, how are you doing?
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for coming at 5 a.m.
I mean, luckily it's super cold, so
Yeah. Luckily it's very cold.
kept awake in this.
Yeah, and the heater isn't really
zombie
working
state.
in the bar. Yeah, it's
Yes.
nice. Yeah, and so so like you said, you first read Lesson Zero at 21. What were your initial responses? What, like reading a book like that? And you were in Denmark at the time?
Yes.
Yeah.
I honestly don't remember how I felt about it at the time.
Yeah.
But reading it back now,
Yeah.
a decade later, I definitely see a lot of my own experience in it,
Okay.
which is very interesting. That something that is a fiction, I think Halldor said this as well, but there's something that's a fiction in LA in the 80s.
Yeah.
I can recognize that from my own life 3 decades later in the suburbs of Copenhagen.
Yeah.
But I have a somewhat of a similar story. So I grew up in this. Well, I grew up in the suburbs,
Yeah.
and then I moved to a different. I intentionally moved to a different place in Denmark to study,
Yeah.
just because I needed to not be in the suburb.
Okay.
And so I sort of recognize some of the same feelings of going back and to the place I grew up and kind of feeling like I'm ready to move on from the place.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And there was this very.
Did you feel like a kind of pressure to fit back in? Because that's one of the things, like in the book, there's always the get a tan,
Yes.
a tan. And so it's like they want you to fit back in, and to kind of disappear here is almost kind of, can mean a lot of things. Obviously,
Yeah.
in the book it means a lot of things, but also can mean just join the group again.
Yes, I noticed the tan. So the tan is like a symbol of like become one of us.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's constantly noticed and pointed out. And so for me, in my life, it was probably more hair. So they always wanted me to straighten my hair.
Yeah.
Like they straighten their hair.
Yeah.
And it's not too bad today, but it's
Yeah, it
it
looks
used
good.
to be very uncontrollable.
Yeah.
And I liked it, but it didn't really fit in with the.
Yeah,
This
how
is how we
everyone
look
looked in your
yeah.
suburb. Yeah.
Exactly. And I also recognize the being in a nightclub and not wanting to be there and being like, I want to go, and everyone's like, no, don't go. And I'm like, why shouldn't I go if I don't want to be here?
And
But it
being
was just like, hold on to me.
and being like a young person this much later, like one of the interesting things is, I bet when people read this in the 80s, seeing young people kind of disaffected and not caring and kind of looking at things as images, like everything is just like, whoa, this is exciting, like seeing a dead body in the
Yeah.
back and just in the back of a club and just kind of kicking it and being like, who cares? That's kind of like, as years went on, if that became more true. So if that was like a kind of localized, kind of affluent LA type thing, and
Yeah.
you're saying you had it there, is that something where you noticed there was kind of like with people your age, this kind of distance between things? Because now I would say it's even worse. I have a 12-year-old stepson, and they watch whatever they watch through their screens, and they don't really react to it in any way.
I've not given that much thought, but
Okay.
I do remember. I think there could be something to it. It's sort of yes and no situation.
Yeah.
But I think we're definitely, what's that phrase? We get used to more and more gruesome things.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember seeing the movie Predator when I was a child, like
Yeah.
8 years old.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's just apparently what we do. Well, that's okay. And yeah, the sort of very horrific things
Yes.
that are described in the book didn't really like. To me, that just made sense.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, it made sense. It makes sense in the world. I'm not shocked by it.
Well, they say like they say that people who watch horror movies, a lot of really anxious people watch horror movies and find it calming.
I listen to a lot of true crime podcasts. Yeah. So I guess this is the same thing. I joke about this on stage as well, that women tend to be consumers of, like, the high consumers of true crime podcasts. And
Yeah.
we also tend to be the victims. So it's kind of like are we preparing for what could happen? Or do we, like, What is it?
Or just
Very interesting.
it's almost like it's over. It feels like it's almost over with because you've listened to it in fiction. It's safe. It's kind of
Yes.
get over the fear
Well,
already.
true crime is true.
Right?
That's-
True crime, but
yeah.
it happened to someone else.
Yeah.
So you got to use like empathy in order to build like a
Yeah.
kind of relieve your anxiety.
Yes.
Yeah.
One thing that I noticed in the book that was, to me, well, I'm a millennial, so I do look at wokeness and political correctness and
okay.
all of that. I wasn't too shocked by the horrific things. Obviously, they're horrific,
Yeah.
but that's a lot of people notice that. But what I noticed that I've not seen when reading up on the book again is people don't really. There's the scene where they're at some party, and Clay just casually mentions there's a lot of young boys hanging around, young
Yeah.
good-looking boys,
Yeah.
and I'm like, that's super sus.
Yeah.
Like that's probably some vulnerable young men that are being taken advantage, taken advantage of
Yeah.
by some rich
Yeah.
older
Definitely.
guys.
Yeah. And
That's not okay. Like that's not.
Yeah,
right,
but it was just kind of happening around him, and you kind of see like,
Yeah.
and that was like after every horrific scene, there always seems to be another one after it,
Yeah.
and also there's this sense of like just everyone moves on.
Yeah.
Nothing really shocked. Like the book is never shocked in itself. There's never anything that happens in the book where the next thing is like, okay, whew, that was
Yeah.
shocking. It's kind of just it moves right along.
Yeah. Well, we're being led into it by this, like 3/3 of the book are just like stream of consciousness or just like new things happening that seemingly, well, nothing happens, but then so much happens that we're sort of in this trance-like state that these
Yeah,
things
yeah.
don't really seem to bother us that much.
Yeah, it kind of hypnotizes you into like accepting whatever's going on.
Yeah.
But you're right, yeah. The young boys, like, if you go through the thing, that blonde, tan, short hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, you can tell, and he's worried he's becoming it, and it's repeated so often, and there's kind of a motif with it. So that's, you can definitely see this kind of, am I becoming one of them? And also you can see he's being kind of trained that that's what to look for, because that's what everyone's looking for.
Yes.
And it also has the Nazi vibe that they bring up, that is
Yes.
kind of like, which is an obsession in LA and in Hollywood and post World War II with boomer parents. Everyone's kind of obsessed with the Nazis.
I heard a podcast about this book where also the millennial host, it's called, can I mention another podcast?
Yeah, sure.
It's called Bret Easton Hell Yes.
Yeah. That's been shared in the Facebook group.
Oh, okay.
There's some people
Yeah.
who've checked it
And-
out. Yeah, where they go through all of his books.
Yeah. And then, so the host, I have a name somewhere else. Her brother is sort of, 'cause he's a bit older, he goes through, like he's gone deep on all these Nazi references, and a lot of the bands as well have like Nazi connections.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of like small hints and yeah.
Yeah, it just makes me think that more and more that he's like the Ian Fleming of the new wave.
That does not mean anything to me.
Oh yeah, like sorry, I was
Oh,
mentioning it to Halldor. I think of him as like James Bond.
Yeah.
Because in James Bond, it's kind of like that, and he was, and because of like him hiding and being like a young gay man as well, and having to hide that and spying on everything, and then the references of Nazis, and that's kind of like with the James Bond novels, and Ian Fleming could have been also closeted. He was obsessed with BDSM and butts, so it doesn't take a master's in literature to. Yeah, he was.
Yes.
To put those two together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's really interesting. Like that's sort of the world that what he sees, but I guess also the world that he lives in.
Yeah.
He notices all these stuff.
And this kind of, but what I think it really is, because especially like the kind of like anti-Japanese sentiment, which is going to be there because of World War II.
Yeah.
Again, and everything is kind of filtered from your parents and from what they would have seen in movies and what they were talking about in school. You can very much tell this was a book written by an 18-year-old.
Yeah.
Because that is the kind of excess. The excess is World War II. That's that. If you talk to a kid, even like when I was growing up, and you ask me about history and what I learned in high school, I can't really tell you even a lot about Canadian history and how it was formed that much. But I can tell you like Nazis are bad.
Yeah.
Hitler was a bad guy.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
kind of all you kind of remember at that time, because that's all you kind of paid attention to. And you got enough movies about it.
I mean, did we pay attention as much as it was just constantly fed to us?
Yeah, exactly.
Like any document, like half of all documentaries made are like Nazi documentaries, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's not an actual fact.
But yeah, that's you can see that kind of filter through in an
Yeah.
18-year-old's mind in his writing, because what he really cares about is his friends and his life and
Yeah.
the songs that are coming through on the radio, and everything else is just kind of filtered.
Yeah, he kind of struggles with showing emotions. Like he seems to me the only one who shows emotions.
Do you see this? Can we put we can put the comments on too?
Oh, hello.
Yeah.
Hey guys.
Do you see that? I also saw this as a kind of like a kind of a trauma book. Like it's someone, you see someone who's just been traumatized, and it's written like someone who's where they are seeking out stuff, but they don't feel like they're there. And there's that method that people have when they're in a traumatic situation where they close in on themselves and then just kind of disappear.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the kind of the motif in the book, disappear here, like he says on the billboard. You disappear and you just let things happen, and you see yourself from above. That it has that feel, even though it's a stream of consciousness.
Yeah. And even if you recognize a situation that you shouldn't be in or don't want to be in, you're like, it kind of frees up. And you're like, well, I guess I don't want to be here, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, this has been really
Ended
good.
on trauma.
Yeah, trauma. We'll end
Classic
on trauma.
Mette.
Yeah, end on trauma.
Yeah.
I think, what are we going to play next? Is it the commercial?
Sure, I can play the commercial.
Oh, no, we can play the commercial, and then after the commercial, we'll have the commercial is just the Bret Easton Ellis T-shirts that are available on BretEastonEllis.com. Also, if you follow anything that's going on right now, Todd is running an auction for 2 less than zero packages where you can buy signed copies of the books with a bookmark, and half the money raised, or even more, I believe, half the money raised is going to be sent back here to Iceland to a charity for the women's shelter here. So we're raising money for the women's shelter in Iceland for any of the purchases that are made through the BretEastonEllis.com website. There are three packages. Thank you. And so you can I'll show you the T-shirts now, and then right after that, we'll play the reading, the third reading, which is the final paragraph of the book, and it's again by Lily Analik, the host of the podcast Once Upon a Time in the Valley. So we'll see you guys in a few minutes. And it's all on eBay too. Thanks.
We could feel as free as 17. I want you. We could feel as free as 17.
There was a song I heard when I was in Los Angeles by a local group. The song was called Los Angeles, and the words and images were so harsh and bitter that the song would reverberate in my mind for days. The images, I later found out, were personal, and no one I knew shared them. The images I had were of people being driven mad by living in the city. Images of parents who were so hungry and unfulfilled that they ate their own children. Images of people, teenagers my own age, looking up from the asphalt and being blinded by the sun. These images stayed with me even after I left the city. Images so violent and malicious that they seemed to be my only point of reference for a long time afterwards, after I left.
Hey, and we're back. That was the third reading from the final paragraph of the book, read by Lily Analik. And so I have with me now, we're going to talk a little bit about the movie as well, because obviously the book, no novel adaptation is ever that good. There's too much in a novel to really be made into a movie, so you have to make your own version of it. And I think I purposely didn't watch the movie before this because I wanted all my comments and understanding to be based within the book itself. But I have someone with me who just watched the movie,
Yes,
and and he also has read the book and is a fan of Bret Easton Ellis, and is a playwright and screenwriter here in Iceland. This is Bjorn.
Hello.
Hello. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good.
Yeah.
Strange to be up at this hour, but I'm fine. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but what you're doing, it's 9 p.m. in LA. That's all you have to care about.
Yeah. Right. And it's not cold outside.
It's not. No.
Yeah.
It's actually freezing in here.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a very international podcast we're having right here.
Yeah. We saw there was someone from Singapore.
Yeah.
There's people from all over the place. The guy doing the sign is in Central Standard Time. I'm not even sure where.
Mm-hmm.
Texas? I don't know, something.
Yeah.
So, briefly, because you just watched the movie.
Yes, just last night.
Okay, so question: does the movie have the psychiatrist?
No, absolutely not.
Okay. Does it have the snuff film?
No, it does not have a snuff film in it.
Okay. Does it have him going away for a weekend with his girlfriend at the beach house?
No.
Okay. Does it have kind of dinner with his parents, where you start to see that his mother mirrors him, like when he says, "You seem sad," she seems sad, and everything he says at the table, she says at the table, and you can very much see the trauma of a broken up family.
It has him doing dinner with his family, and then his dad is playing the piano. He goes with his the girl to a corridor in the house, and he bangs her across to the wall.
Yeah.
And has sex with her, and then they come back and finish the dinner with the family. So no. To your question, it doesn't have that scene in it.
Okay. And then Julian.
Yeah.
Julian. See, in the book, Julian, I believe Julian again has short blonde hair.
Yeah, it's Robert Downey Jr. in the film.
Yeah, that's right. I purposely, that's why I didn't want to rewatch it, because I have this thing. I don't know if you do this, but if you're reading the book, I don't look up anything on the internet while I'm reading. The only thing I have with me, if in this case, because I read the book twice and did notes, like a million notes with these things. Do you know that sticky highlighters in Iceland cost 2,130 kroner? That's $16 American. It costs to get the little stickers I put in the book. The book's now triple its value just because I have stickers in it.
I just paid just $10 for 10 of these American style paper clips yesterday. Those you fold back. And
Why do we live up here?
It beats me,
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think like I was saying, I think there's something about, and I hope this kind of happens in this book club. There's a thing about giving the writer the chance to play with your imagination. Mm-hmm. And novels are a self-contained thing where all the information you need to understand it is in the book. I don't know, and I still don't know, I didn't look it up, what the colony is, but I imagine, because in the book they mention there's an area where they're the one character, she only likes guys from the colony who look like David Bowie.
Right.
And I don't know what the colony is, but I imagine it's an area, and I just picture big apartment block buildings for some reason. But I'm sure
that's called the colony or something.
That's called the colony.
Yeah.
But I didn't look it up because I want to have all of my I want to see how I respond to the work with the references I have, so I can understand. Afterwards, I look everything up and I nerd out and everything. But that's why I didn't want to look up the movie, because once you see Robert Downey Jr. as Julian, then when you're reading along in the book, you start picturing it. But what's interesting enough, and I'm sure this has been commented on before, and I'm the first one. Robert Downey Jr. and his cadence in his speech kind of works for this.
In the film, you mean?
Yeah, in the film, it sounds kind of like the book. From when I read it, and I knew, because I already knew Robert Downey Jr. was in it, I kind of thought some of this I could picture him saying, so I can see that kind of character. But what happens with Julian?
Robert Downey Jr.'s performance in the film is maybe the only thing in the film that is slightly similar to what happens in the book. I mean, Clay, the lead character in the film, he doesn't even do drugs.
Yeah.
He just sort of tags along, and is a codependent friend who is always trying to get Julian out of trouble and get him to stop being a prostitute.
Yeah.
And then there's this love story with the girl, and so
they Hollywoodized it.
It's vastly different from the book. The film is more of don't do drugs, kids. If you do, you're gonna get fucked up, and But if you do a lot of them, because you're gonna have fun for a short while, and then you're gonna end up as a prostitute or whatever.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and the book is more like just like a flattened out, like empty portrayal of drug abuse.
Yeah, and it's not. The book is not about. It's not really commenting on drugs as in that type of tone. So like in the anti-drug type of tone, it's saying this is how things are, and this is the way people are, and this is how they deal with life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it's kind of like the parents are having 3, 4, 5 drinks every time they sit down with the family.
Taking pills.
There's pills popping all the time. Oh, I've done too much coke. Now I'm going to do a Valium type of thing. And how do you relate to this sort of like in Iceland? Comparing that to an LA, like I was talking to Halldor and Mette, she said when she read Bret Easton Ellis' work, she was like, wow, this reminds me of my suburb, and there was some like relations and things like that. But how did you, when you read about affluent young people in Los Angeles with parents who don't care about them, that's not very Icelandic. In this culture, parents are very active. Really.
I think those pockets of society in Iceland are more isolated somehow, and they are way smaller, you know. I mean, there is some population in the Reykjavik suburbs that I think portray this extreme American lifestyle, you know, just like trying to live like glamorously and and self-medicate with booze and drugs, you know. Yeah. So I definitely think I know some characters that and people that are sort of are like this. Yeah. So I know it exists, but I think it's just a very isolated pocket of society.
And you've kind of like as a writer, you've left home and come back. Did you relate to this with like in Lesson Zero again is kind of like the coming home for Christmas. Yeah. It's kind of like the going away to college novel when you've already gone away, in order to give the kind of ironic or like space between what you were and what you'd become. Yeah. And everyone's kind of nostalgic in the novel, and he's very nostalgic. Clay is the character. He's going back to his schoolyard. He's looking back at all this stuff. But the one character who isn't, who's also kind of the mysterious figure you're chasing, is Julian. Right. Julian, when he says, "Hey, remember when we were at soccer practice together, a football practice, when we were 11 years old?" He says, "I don't remember anything." Or
it's
something
like a ghost from the past. He's chasing.
Yeah, but Julian never is. He's almost like the anti-Gatsby.
Right.
In terms of American literature, he's the character. He's the guy who has completely let go of the past.
It's funny you mentioned this, like coming back home, you know, because I've spent some time abroad, you know, going back and forth to Berlin. Like I did that for a couple of years, and you know, when that happened, I sort of lost my sense for home, you know. Yeah. And then you know, I was going between apartments, and even though when I even had my own apartment for an extended period of time, it just because of this like moving around, it sort of I lost the feeling of home, you know, and I really related to that in the book, you know, and he's coming back and experiences like his old neighborhoods, his friends and everything as a relic from the past, or like a dream or something like that, and
it almost becomes like there is this element again of just of going through the motions, playing a character. Like I think everyone's experienced this feeling where you go away and then you for a while and then you come back, and very slowly you just start to become the person you were before you left again.
Yeah, you take up your old habits.
You take up your old habits.
Like this is very like clear when you go to like a school reunion. You know, the bully becomes the bully again. Yeah, and the bullied becomes bullied, and you know the chicks that were hot back then, they're like sort of living on that. You know, their old dreams.
Yeah, exactly. And how it's paced in the novel, I found really interesting. Like in the first 10 pages, it's mentioned 3 times that he's pale. And then by about 30 pages in, he goes, "I decided to get a tan." So it's like now he's making an active decision. He's going back. He's going back home. Yeah. He's going to really be home. And then like a third of the novel, 60 some pages in, he gets a sunburn. So he realizes maybe this isn't what he wants to do. And that's when the novel really kind of
takes
turns.
a turn. Yeah, absolutely.
But have you read a lot of American fiction? Is that something like Halldor that you've read?
Not really, to be honest. No, some, but yeah.
But you're obsessed with America. Like you're a film buff. You're writing a screenplay right now.
Yeah, I am. This is my second screenplay that I'm writing, and so films are just my thing. You know, I've mostly focused on European writing and Icelandic, of course, and but American literature is like I'm a fan of Hunter Thompson, of course, as you are, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And like I read Bret Easton Ellis books, most of them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and this is again, like I said at the beginning, but it's a live stream, so I can repeat myself, I guess. You do see a relation to him and the kind of like the next step after the new journalism in the 1960s. So Hunter S. Thompson, Joan Didion, Norman Mailer, the people who put themselves into the story. It has that feel. The structure, because what I also found interesting is the epistolary, the like diary entries that Clay has about, and you realize the story is about coming to terms with the death of his grandmother a little bit, and about the time he spent there, and it's about looking back and where did life go.
And the feeling of reporting, you know.
Yeah, but it has, exactly. These are diary entries, but the diaries are never used to propel the narrative forward. They're used for tone adjustments. So just when you think you like, if you need a little bit of breath, or you need to figure out, okay, how do I react to what just happened? He just pictured coyote. Blair just hit a coyote, or he just pictured a baby melting on the engine, like a child melting on the engine of a car.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? And then there's these pacing breaks that are never even, but they come in at the right time, and all of these points have this tonal adjustment. Can we get the comments on?
Yeah. I think this is also like a very important thing where the film differentiates from the book. Like this is like you cannot put this kind of literature into a movie, so it has to be changed.
It's very much
structured. It's changing the characters to make it more linear and more of a story.
They try this sort of thing, like in American Psycho, the scene where in the movie where he hits him with the axe. He's talking about Huey. I really think Huey Lewis and the News came into their own with Hip to Be Square. Like that scene is kind of a way of playing with what the text had, where the narrator talks to you directly. But all of these techniques, these literary techniques, are really only possible in the novel form, and it isn't a very visual.
It was way more successful in American Psycho than in Less Than Zero.
Yeah, it's not a very successful adaptation, but it is its own thing, and it's a comedy in its own right, the American Psycho. But it's not like the elements of American Psycho that make it. But we'll get into that in American Psycho. Yeah. That like. It's quite a bit different, but Less Than Zero, again, it's a popular novel. It gets published. It's got great critical acclaim. He's young. He's part of this group, so they want to make a movie about it, and they want to get some young stars in it. James Spader is in it.
Right.
If it's in
fabulous drug dealer.
Yeah. If it's in the 1980s or 90s and has any sort of transgressive sex in it, James Spader is in that movie.
Absolutely. Yeah. Combing his hair back like.
But one thing what's interesting is because. If you listen to the Bret Easton Ellis podcast, you know how important film is to him, and he's always like, that's what he does. He's a film critic.
He paints pictures like films sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, and what's interesting is in the novel, the only because the novel has meta elements to it. The one thing, and I'm sure people who have read it would know, the one thing I found really interesting was he was talking to a film student, and he uses talking to a film student to comment on the novel itself. So rather than make little jokes or something, which some people might do, like where the narrator is like so witty that they can make an aside about what happened in it, he has a conversation where he talks to a film student, and this film student says, I'm interested in the aesthetics of indifference in American cinema. And that's aesthetics of indifference is how you would describe the novel Less Than Zero.
Absolutely.
And then a few pages later, they're talking about the movie Beastman. And he goes, and the narrator goes, I didn't like Beastman. And then he goes, why did you like Beastman? Didn't you think it was weird that the characters were just dropping out at random and you just never saw them again? And the film critic says, isn't that real life?
Yeah.
And then you realize that, he's saying real life. He's also talking about the novel Less Than Zero, where characters, like I was talking with Halldor, come in and out the whole time. There's always people mistaken identity, which of course happens in his later novels as well. But people don't know who people are. They just kind of they just go hi, they say whatever, and then people leave and they're like, I have no idea who that was.
This is what happens when you're on Valium and when you're on uppers and downers at the same time. And
but how do you, I'm still impressed, and I know we were talking about the film, but in the book, it's so impressive that you could get these sort of outrageous comic characters to seem real because of how obviously traumatic it would be to live in a world where these people are real. Like,
Yeah.
I think if you had a lot of comedic characters who are this outrageous, if you really were around people like that, like if you were around people from The Office, the TV show, it would be a nightmare. Like people who do these outrageous things, you couldn't live like that, and they just play it like you could. But what makes this book so interesting is you have these outrageous characters who don't care, who are just crazy. The father goes from being just handing out money to all of a sudden asking him to get an astrologer. Like these characters are outrageous, and you believe it. It doesn't become too much, and you believe it's his life because you can see how traumatized he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
To the point where he has to fire a psychiatrist.
Yeah,
and tells him to go fuck himself.
Yeah, because he's asking him to help him write a screenplay, right?
Yeah.
So
The psychiatrist. Todd had mentioned it in the comments. The psychiatrist is constantly like just talking to him, and he's just sitting there and saying whatever he wants and smoking, and he has his sunglasses on, and the psychiatrist is telling him about his mistress, pitching a screenplay to him, and then finally when he's breaking down after too much drugs and just craziness, and he's just doesn't know what's going on, he's like, he's trying to tell him what's wrong with it, and the psychiatrist isn't interested. He's trying to move the conversation around. He goes, "What about me?" And he goes, "Let's talk about something else." It's just outrageous. I know we mentioned
a
before.
psychiatrist living in this kind of world, talking to people that are like are unredeemable,
But I think none, like, because it's Los Angeles, it is just that everyone is this kind of desperate Hollywood. Like every position is just a holding pattern. You're only talking to that person because you want to know what you can get from them. Like I wonder if he's for sale.
Absolutely.
How much is I wonder if he's for sale is like the repeat. They always have, and then that happens to Julian. People are for sale, and so it is kind of like everyone's looking to see, okay, what can I get from the next person, which is this metaphor of being out there in the desert, and coyotes just coming in and picking off the cats in people's yards, and you never know, is it a serial killer, or is it just coyotes in the desert coming and picking off your pet? Yeah.
I mean, it's a doggy dog world, I guess, out there. It's
a doggy dog world.
It's a very very bleak picture that he paints, and
he paints, but there's also the kind of hope because he leaves. Like if you were reading this and you say you related to it, you related to the novel, and you were like, okay, I felt this, maybe not in the same way, and your story is different, but you do feel like I relate to this novel. The big emancipation at the end is the important part. He's not like the kids who, has school started. Oh no, I don't think I'm going to go back. I can't remember even being there anyways. He doesn't disappear there.
No.
He decides to appear and leave, and that's kind of like, it is a triumphant novel in that sense.
And just because he is, calm, like the book is from the viewpoint of somebody who is at least observing these things, if not, and participating in it. Okay, he's guilty of participation, but he's not openly making comments about it, but he is, at least he's aware of what's happening. So in a sense, this gives him a little bit of hope, gives him potential of redemption. So
even when he completely loses himself and he just goes and he watches what happens to Julian and he leaves, and then he goes in and he sees the gang rape happening. He does have, I guess, and this is where it puts him in squarely in American fiction. He does have it like he turns to Rip and he says, "This isn't good." And like Rip, he's like, "Why are you doing this?" And Rip,
why not?
Yeah, why not? He's like, "What do you mean? I have," and he's like, "You have everything." He's like, "Yeah, I don't have anything to lose." And there's this kind of attitude, but that moment when he lost everything, and he is kind of, you see him kind of becoming one of them a bit, and you see this kind of distance and coldness. That choice to say that and leave the party, even though he goes and sees these people again, which is also kind of the weird part. Just that moment where he goes, this isn't right. When he says this to Rip, that is, I think, it echoes the kind of history of American literature, because Huckleberry Finn, the most famous part of it, is when Huckleberry Finn says, "I don't care what society says. If I'm going to hell for helping Jim, then I'll do it." And so this is kind of like the 1985 answer to the American question: Do you fall in line, or do you believe in the individual and your individual right to choose what is right and wrong?
Your own values.
Yeah.
I mean, if you were to assign one value to the movie, this would be the climax of the movie. Does he participate in the raping of a 12-year-old, or does he leave? And he leaves. So
he leaves.
Yeah.
But he also, and that's, he doesn't do. It's not as active because the whole point is this aesthetics of indifferent. But he does make the choice that he won't turn away. He knows this happens. He reports it. He's obviously done something because, you know, this is written down. So you have this document feel. So you know that he's chosen to face this stuff, and that he left, and that he leaves home. He doesn't stay in this. So he's. I think that's kind of the message, if I had to guess, the message of the novel, in a way, if there is a message, that, you know, you don't know these things. Aesthetically, it has the tone and it has the finality and it's got everything there. But if you wanted a takeaway from this is that you can face these things and you can leave.
Right.
You can.
I would argue that the movie tries to stay away from like giving any like messages or like telling him what to do, and you know.
Does it? Yeah. In the movie, though, Julian dies at the end.
Yeah, I mean, like this is the way, you know, Hollywood structures their movies. You know, they have to have like a beginning, middle, and ending. Well,
that's the difference between, I think, like a moral or something, or getting something from the tone and the style of book. That's the difference between that and ideology. Is that as soon as you say we're going to instruct you what to think from the beginning, it changes the whole way the story is told, and that's what you get with the movie. I've seen the movie a long time ago, but I haven't seen it recently. But I because I wanted to really focus on the text. But that's the difference, is that if you think that putting these kind of things in means that you're teaching people. I said this on the interview about this live stream. If you think that if you're concerned with, like, in the Dorian Gray aspect, you know the story of Dorian Gray, yes. Oscar Wilde, you have the guy gets to live forever because the painting is rotting in the attic. And it just seems today, because we're all online, we're all in the attic looking at the paintings, and that's what we care about. Like, we want to cancel art, we want to cancel literature and things like that, because you can't say this. They want to fix everything up, and they think that it's going to somehow fix the person or fix the people, but it doesn't. It doesn't work that way. It's a mistake to think so, and this is, you know, and that's why this, I think, his books are important.
And I think that there's also like the difference, like from the time when the book was written and from today, that what has changed vastly is like people today tend to be telling each other more what to do. I think, like, both directly and through social media and through, you know, I don't know, or at least that's the feeling I get. Like back then, you could, you know, go into more of a you know, strange, crazy drug, you know, fueled world, and you could be there alone. Like today, you can't do it, you know, because of like telephones, social media, and
yeah.
So I think
that's the other thing, is I don't know how this could, if an 18-year-old could write this novel today.
I don't think so.
Because in the scene, like I mentioned him now a few times, a photographer goes into the bathroom. Everyone's a photographer now, but I don't even think people, like Halldor said, he wrote plays and stuff like that because you know, you're watching TV and stuff, and that's what's important to you. But if it's not, if text isn't important to you, and diaries aren't important to you, and writing isn't important to you, and you're just kind of a visual person, I don't know if you would tell this story in the same way, or it would be that surprising that people saw horrific things and didn't react to them. Because if you scroll through TikTok or whatever, you see horrific things and you just move on. I
think if you would write a book like this today, you would be highly criticized for not having a moral message, you know, or something.
Yeah, I think it would, or they would say, who, like, does he have the right to tell this story? Because like becoming like being a privileged white kid in Los Angeles, you know, it kind of says, like, do you really get to talk about this? Is this your place? We want to hear from a different point of view, but that's not important. The book is I think stands on its own as a piece of art.
Yeah, absolutely. And if just for the quality of it being like a window into a world that is gone, you know.
Yeah, perfect. We can see. I'm not seeing any new comments. Have you gotten any more? Yeah, live. Okay, so then I guess we got it all there. This is thank you very much. Good, Leo. That's
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. If you're still watching, we just have a few announcements on the live stream. This has been the first one. We're gonna try and get the comment section working a little bit better so that you guys can have a more active role in this. We were just trying to get you guys commenting on the YouTube channel to get it working, but we see that, you know, this is a little bit difficult. Okay, looking forward to the next one of these book clubs. So when the film adaptation comes up, we can discuss the fact that the Rules of Attraction movie totally rules. Okay. We'll be able to do that as well. So any tips also, because a lot of you guys that are watching, you guys are patrons of the Bret Easton Ellis podcast, or just people that are interested in the novel, because you can watch this obviously free through the stream. Just comment on what you'd like to change so that you can have a more active role in the live stream and that you can comment a bit better. We're going to try and tune these because the next one is on February 2nd at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Yeah, this is being recorded. Okay, I wasn't commenting because I was enjoying the convo. I just jumped in. I would have loved to have joined the discussion. Okay, well, yeah, how we're going to do it is I want to get kind of a more active role with people commenting. I don't want it to be too much just us talking and you guys listening, because this is for everyone, and we want you guys to be reading the books and feel that there's that you get a chance to talk about your experience doing so. And so that's going to be, again, the rules of attraction. It wasn't clear where to comment, actually. Okay, yeah, we're right now we do it through YouTube. But yeah, any of these, if you're in the Bret Easton Ellis podcast Facebook group, you can join there. I should read some comments. Okay.
Start from the beginning.
Start from the beginning and just read some comments. If anyone wants to comment, actually, we got a little bit of time. So before we stop or anything, I would like to let anyone who wants to comment now, you can comment now, and then I'll do some of the credits and thank everyone. So this entire live show has been incredible, but Bret Easton Ellis is my favorite writer of time, so this was cool, insightful, and a great way to celebrate Lesson Zero in Bret's writing. Go through it, exactly. Now we have a message here. We were discussing this earlier. What filmmaker do you guys think could do the novel Less Than Zero justice? What do you think? What filmmaker do you think would be able to pull off making Less Than Zero?
I think the Greek one that did what's his name, with the dog tooth, and then
really,
yeah, I think so.
Oh,
just
yeah,
because of the weirdness of his what's his name, Yargos.
Yeah, Yargos.
Yargos, yeah, something. Because of the weirdness of his
the killing of the sacred deer.
Yeah, he's
and the lobster.
This distance, and intensity of his filmmaking.
Okay.
I think so. Yeah.
Because
if you want to do the movie justice, it's gotta be weird. It's gotta also, it needs to be,
Yeah,
it needs to channel this drug-fueled insanity that is in the book.
Yeah, I think for me, I don't know. I think it would have to be. I think Paul Thomas Anderson, just because I see the kind of same long scenes, long discussions, the clubs. I don't know, but it could be just because I've just been watching it again because it was tweeted about. But yeah, I don't know.
He makes his movies are kind of.
I know who I wouldn't have. I wouldn't have Cronenberg do it.
Not.
No.
Why not?
I just think it wouldn't go in. It's like a hat on a hat. It's too much. Like the distance would become too much, and then it wouldn't be as effective.
Yeah, it would fall in on itself.
Is there any more comments people want to have? People earlier were saying Ari Aster would be a great director. What do you think about that? What do you think about Ari Aster?
I don't know him.
You don't know him personally?
No.
Isn't he Scandinavian? Do you know?
No.
No. The Safdie brothers would be intense.
That's a pretty good. Yeah, that could work out. I could see that. With
Yeah,
like excellent casting.
Yeah.
Intense. Really good use of music and the zeitgeist, and yeah.
Yeah. But they are I know. But just comparing Good Time and Uncut Gems, I don't know if that's the toolkit I would use. No. Or the aesthetic I would use for this, but maybe they'd be interested in it. But this can do you know the director Ben Wheatley?
Nope.
He did Free Fire, Kill List.
I saw Kill List.
Yeah. Kill List. Yeah, he's quite good. And then he did this adaptation of Rebecca. It's a Daphne. I don't know. I forget the writer's name. It was done by Hitchcock. It was an Academy Award-winning movie that Hitchcock did, and he did it. And I was like, whoa, he's so great. It's going to be awesome because I like his lower budget movies, and he gets all this money for this Netflix movie, and Rebecca is just terrible.
What year was it released?
2020.
Okay.
Yeah, it just came out on Netflix.
Ah.
Yeah, so that's like sometimes you think it'd be the right person, but wouldn't. Someone who would capture the authentic 80s aesthetic. Ari Aster, Lesson Zero would be insane, brutal, and beautiful. Yeah, I don't know who. What do you have any 80s movies that you like, or people who've captured the 80s? Not necessarily an 80s movie, but a movie that's like going back and trying to capture the feeling of the 80s.
I like Blue Velvet's portrayal of the 80s, like suburban, weird.
Yeah. David Lynch. What do you guys think? What do you guys in the Daphne du Maurier? Thank you. Jesus, I hate it when like you see the text in your mind when you're remembering like the cover of the book. I just looked at the cover of the book a day ago, and then it just gets all scrambled in your head when you're trying to do it live. Daphne, duh. Yeah. I should know it. Du Maurier is a brand of cigarettes in Canada.
Du Maurier.
Yeah. Ari Aster was the director of Midsommar and Hereditary.
Oh yes.
Yeah, we knew that.
Yeah. I've seen both of those. I didn't just.
Oh, you just didn't know the name of the director.
I'm very bad at names.
Very bad at names.
Oh.
Yeah, everyone in Iceland, they know the names are easy because it's just your first name and then the name of your father plus son or daughter.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So it's easy. Names are smaller here.
You can't be called De Maurier in Iceland.
You can't be called De Maurier. No. Well.
You can.
You can.
You shouldn't.
You shouldn't.
Yeah.
No, it's unsightly.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other comments? I think. What we got here? There's a wee bit of a lag. Derek Cianfrance. Do you know that person? I don't know it either, and I thought I was gonna kind of know everything. I knew Ari Aster had directed Midsommar and Hereditary, but can you what movies has he done? Derek Cianfrance. Blue Valentine. Yeah, that was with Ryan Gosling and what's her name? The person who was married to the Joker, Heath Ledger.
Yeah. Was it with Heath Ledger in it?
Heath Ledger's not in it, but Heath Ledger's
ex-wife.
Ex-wife.
Yeah.
You don't follow this stuff?
No.
Not Julia Stiles. No, she had Save the Last Dance.
Wow. So they're counting up everything that I don't know.
Blue Valentine, A Place Beyond the Pines. That's actually, you know what? What is my personal favorite of Bret's work? My personal favorite of Bret's work, I guess, would have to be Rules of Attraction, I think. I read it first because I was going through a strange Gore Vidal phase as a teenager, as many teenagers do, and I just noticed that I already had heard of American Psycho and Bret Easton Ellis, but I hadn't read anything yet. And then I believe on the dust jacket of Rules of Attraction, there was like a quote from Gore Vidal, and I was like, how did he get Gore Vidal to, it was kind of like, this must be good.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in a household where that's what I read. Like that's how I understand most of my knowledge of literature and politics are from reading Gore Vidal's essays, because that's what my parents are a lot older.
Yeah.
It's almost like I'm Generation X, even though I'm a millennial, because my parents were so old when they had me. Like my parents are boomers, and I have a brother who's 20 years older than me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but
So you're
I have a huge gap. So I just I grew up where I thought Gore Vidal was an important public figure. He was obviously, and so I kind of. Yeah.
Somebody mentioned
Michelle Williams. Thank you.
Quentin Tarantino as well.
Quentin Tarantino's would do it justice. I don't know. I think you would. I think it's. You can't have. It can't be too. I don't know if you'd be restrained enough to have these outrageous characters, but maybe.
But he's never done book adaptations, right?
He's never. Yeah. He does originals.
Yeah.
I think the only adaptation he's done is the one that people who don't like Quentin Tarantino. Jackie Brown.
Yeah.
The people who don't like Quentin Tarantino, that's their favorite Quentin Tarantino. Because they.
Yeah, he would definitely nail the music. And, and the look of it.
Nicholas Winding Refn, the person who did Drive and Neon Demon and Only God Forgives. Yeah, I could see that. I really I know those are not like the best. People don't like them, but I enjoyed all of them. I really enjoyed Drive, but then Neon Demon I liked just because I had fun watching it.
Yeah, Drive was a total home run.
Yeah, Drive was great, and a great way to sell jackets.
Exactly.
I think I
Was it
didn't.
a snake on his back?
Yeah, but it was like the Harrington bomber style jacket, silk. I didn't buy one, but I did look up Ryan Gosling, and he was selling, like he was wearing a sweatshirt, and I ended up buying a Ryan Gosling sweatshirt.
With the logo on back?
No, just a gray sweatshirt that they said Ryan Gosling wears the perfect sweatshirt, and it's the sweatshirt that makes every man look good. And I bought it, and you know what? I didn't look as good as Ryan Gosling, so
Shit.
felt ripped off. Okay, so yeah, Winding Refs would definitely be fun. Tarantino for a mini series. I think that is true. If you wanted, I think a lot of Bret's work, you wouldn't want to do as a movie anyways. I think it would be a mini series. I think that's going to be the way to do something like that.
Yeah, as it is with like most novels, you know.
Yeah, there's too much in it for it to be like a 2-hour story. It would have to be a completely different thing, which all movies are when they're an adaptation. But a mini series, I think, would be the answer for that.
Yeah.
So just to let everyone know, you can keep commenting here, but we're going to be wrapping up right away. If you are interested, there's stuff for sale on the www.breteastonellis.com website in the shop there. Also, anything if you buy any of the Less Than Zero packages that are on auction, there's 3 of them available. Half the money is going to the women's shelter here in Iceland, so half the money is going to help out people here. Also, but any of the books that are for sale and any products or the T-shirts or anything like that, you can head up to breteastonellis.com. It's a great way to support, the Bret Easton Ellis. You're reading the book anyways. You might as well get it from a source. It's kind of fun to have, especially in these days when you got to do everything at home anyways. It's kind of nice to have packages being sent to you.
Yeah. I've had a lot of those.
Yeah. I've been living in the world by collecting things and
consuming.
And I think that's what you should do to be happy. I think if Bret Easton Ellis's books have taught me anything, it's that consumer culture makes you feel really good.
Yeah, at least keeps you busy.
At least keeps you busy. It gives you things to list.
Yeah,
that's true. Like the car you drive, the clothes you wear, that's all that matters.
And your jacket that says you don't look like what's his name?
What?
The sweater you bought?
Oh yeah, Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
A jacket that says you're cool like Ryan Gosling. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed the live stream. Any comments you have? Thank you. Great Lolita shirt, by the way. Thank you. It's I thought it was a risky choice, but I went for it. Anything you guys think you want to change, and I really want to I'm really going to work for the next one on getting the comments more incorporated so you can become more a part of the show. And obviously there is a bit of a lag, so I'm getting used to this. It's we're doing this from Iceland, so I'm getting used to just the lag and how everything goes together. And it's my first time hosting a book club chat. So any comments or any help you can have so I can make this a more enjoyable experience. We have 7 more of these to go. Rules of Attraction is going to be on February 2nd, 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We have a few thank yous. Thank you to all the guests that came on. Bjorn Leo, Mette Kousholt, and Halldor Armand Auskersson. Dager Johansson is doing all the tech and video right now. Big thank you. Davith, who is directing, he couldn't be here because he had a baby today. His wife went into labor this morning before the live stream. Dan Zarin here, who's been helping out, and he's helping out with the production here on the Icelandic end. And a big, especially big thank you to Lily Analik for sending in the readings and recording them. And of course, this wouldn't have been possible without Todd Michael Schultz for producing this and making this kind of thing possible. But we're going to keep building this up and trying to make it more and more. And this is only because we want it to be interactive. It only becomes better content and more fun and more exciting the more you guys give back to it. So any criticism, anything you have, I want to hear it, and I want to make this better for you. And I hope to see you guys again soon. Thanks again for tuning in, and see you on February 2nd at 9 p.m.